On the day a judge in Hamilton County voided my marriage like a mislabeled coupon, the courtroom smelled like old paper and peppermint, and my wife, no, my former wife, Laura, sat 2 rows ahead, tilting her head at the ceiling tile where a water stain looked suspiciously like the state of Florida. The bailiff, square jaw, buzz cut, and American flag pin, whispered, "All rise." And I did, legs shaking like an unbalanced washing machine. The judge read the finding. The union between Laura and me was legally valid until it wasn't, because Laura had married someone else while living under my roof, petting my dog, eating my Aldi guacamole. The word bigamy got tossed around in a way that made people cough into their elbows like it was a dusty hymn. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the peculiar thrill of a live wire, sadness and betrayal braided together with an un-American urge to clap sarcastically. Her other husband, Ethan, lean, bearded, the kind of man who knows what single origin means, stood in the corridor afterward, hands in his pockets like a summer camp counselor. "No hard feelings, Mike," he said, as if we had shared a kayak and she was the paddle. I told him there were hard feelings, medium feelings, and several feelings that had not yet been categorized by the American Psychological Association. I tried not to say revenge out loud because I'm church-raised and carry guilt like a gym membership. The court called it infidelity, cheating, and a violation of legal expectations, which felt like describing a tornado as a breeze in a hurry. The murmur crowd, neighbors, church friends, and one guy I know from Home Depot who is in love with cedar, kept their distance the way folks do at a 4th of July fireworks show when the first spark goes sideways. Pastor Rick squeezed my shoulder and spoke softly about forgiveness, as if family operates on store hours, and I had merely arrived too late. But even as he prayed, a conspiracy bloomed in my head, ridiculous and glowing. The HOA president, Ms. Whitfield, who once fined me for a patriotic gnome, had signed Laura's secret wedding license in the basement of City Hall, lit by the emergency exit sign, while a vending machine rattled out a Diet Dr. Pepper like a sacrament. Later that night, alone in my driveway under a Midwestern sky the color of dryer lint, I thought of the day I first suspected her double life. The memory arrived in reverse, like a movie winding back so fast the actors became ghosts and the laughter turned robotic. I could see myself in my kitchen, in my Costco sweatpants, reading a bank alert about a boutique hotel in Cincinnati with a rooftop pool, imagining Laura alone in a pillowy bathrobe. Only later did I learn the bathrobe had 2 belt loops and 2 people. Somewhere between the judge's gavel and a scoop of grocery store potato salad at the church potluck, my grief mutated into a new American organism, petty, satirical, half-heroic, part feral raccoon. I swore to tell my story out of order because order had not done me any favors. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a parade float built out of toxic love and glitter. You want the how and the why? Fine. Start at the end, the judge stamping a document that unhooked the anchor from my ankle. The rest, cheating, infidelity, all those words we try to launder with lavender detergent, can wait its turn. What matters first is that as the courtroom emptied, I noticed the bailiff's ring, a simple silver band. The exact one I had bought Laura at a mall kiosk between a pretzel stand and a store that sells ironic mugs. I stared until my eyes felt like unripe grapes. The bailiff noticed. He slipped his hand in his pocket and smiled like a man who always wins at cornhole. Which is how I knew this wasn't just my wife and Ethan. There was a whole ecosystem of vows cross-pollinating behind my back, like a secret beekeeping club in the suburbs, and I was the guy allergic to honey. Flash backward to the last dinner we ate as a normal couple. Tuesday meatloaf night, our son Jake upstairs blasting a playlist so full of bass I could feel the HOA complaint drafting itself across the street. The house smelled like brown sugar glaze and defeat. I had printed the hotel bill because I'm old-school American when it comes to confrontation. If I'm going to accuse someone, there will be paper, possibly a highlighter. Laura walked in late, tossed me a kiss that landed somewhere near the microwave, and muttered about traffic on I-75 like it had personally wronged her. "Tell me about the rooftop garden suite, honey," I said, casually slicing the meatloaf like it owed me money. She paused, then smiled thinly. "Oh, that," she said, like I had asked about a sweater she'd once owned. "Girls' night." "Girls," I repeated, as in plural, as in women with names and W-2s. Her eye twitched, a tiny strobe light. I slid the print out across the table as if it were a divorce in drag. She looked at it like a cat looks at a cucumber. "Mike," she whispered, then louder, "Mike, please don't do your detective show monologue." "Detective shows have writers. I have receipts," I said. I don't know what happened next except that she laughed, and the laugh was not the one I married. It was brittle, designer, like a wine glass that costs more than a tire. "I joined a club," she said, and I swear the refrigerator hummed in solidarity. "A club," I repeated, thinking of pickleball or church choir or the bipartisan task force against raccoons in our trash. "It's called the Fellowship of the Two Rings," she said, dead serious, "and if that isn't a parody of Middle-earth, I'll eat the neighbor's flag." "It's for people who don't fit inside one story," she continued, hands floating like she'd memorized this speech from a podcast. "We're not criminals. We're multi-narrative." "That's not a thing, Laura. That's an indie band." She looked toward the sink, where a parade of dishes waited like witnesses. "I loved you. I do," she said, then corrected herself. "I love you. But Ethan, he's the life I missed. You're the porch light. He's the wildfire." And there it was, the script of toxic love you hear on late-night AM radio between the commercials for mattresses and Miracle pain creams. "So you secretly married him." She didn't nod. She didn't need to. The silence had weight. "In the basement of City Hall," I pushed, with Ms. Whitfield watching from a folding chair. Her eyes widened just enough to confirm that my conspiracy corkboard, still theoretical at that moment, had a center string. "I'm not the villain," she said softly, and maybe she wasn't, not entirely. Villains wear capes. Laura wore athleisure and a half-guilty smile. "This is America. We edit our stories. We've always done it. Think of the Founding Fathers. I'm thinking of the part where you said vows twice without returning the first set for store credit," I said. "Our family," I added, and the word broke apart like a cracker in soup. "What about Jake?" "Jake is resilient," she said, the way people say, "This couch is stain-resistant." I didn't throw anything. I didn't shout. I remember a weird calm, the kind they describe in disaster documentaries. I washed my plate because Midwestern men weaponize chores when the ground opens. Then I told her I'd be visiting City Hall. She didn't stop me. She kissed my cheek, said, "You're safe, Mike," which was the exact moment I learned that calling a man safe can be its own betrayal. Upstairs, Jake texted from behind his door. "You good?" I typed, "Sure, just solving a crime." He replied with a skull emoji, because teenagers talk in hieroglyphs. I slept on the couch listening to the dishwasher purr like a law I couldn't afford to break. City Hall in our town looks like a library that dreamed of being a courthouse but settled for government cosplay. It's beige inside. All government buildings in the Midwest are painted the color of an overripe banana. A security guard waved me through metal detectors with the bored dignity of a minor deity. Downstairs, near the vending machines where Snickers bars rest like a row of small brown coffins, I found the marriage licensing office and, to my astonishment, a touchscreen kiosk labeled ClerkBot 2000, Faster Vows for a Faster America. A laminated sign explained that the county had partnered with a startup called Nouveau, a subsidiary of a tech firm that also sells compostable phone cases, to modernize matrimony. I pressed the help button. A cartoon ring popped up and winked at me like a Vegas uncle. A woman with reading glasses and a haircut that said, "I have seen everything twice," emerged from a doorway. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for records," I said, trying to sound like a man who wore better cologne. "My wife may have, well, she may have married someone else while married to me." The woman did not blink. "Third one this week," she said, tapping her keyboard with nails that could open a soda can. She asked for names. I gave them Laura Ann Miller, Ethan Wade, Norcross. She typed, frowned, typed again. The printer coughed out paper like it was telling secrets against its will. When she handed me the document, the heading delivered a laser beam to my forehead. Special Pilot, Concurrent Vow Registry. Beneath it, authorized signatory, Whitfield, Karen. HOA President, Alder Creek. "What in the patriotic casserole is this?" I asked. The clerk shrugged in the universal American dialect of, "It's above my pay grade." "Pilot program," she said. "People think marriage only meant one structure. Tech people say we needed optionality. There's an app." Of course there was an app. I imagined a menu of spouse add-ons, like guac but for souls. "Isn't this illegal?" I asked. "Depends who you ask. We're calling it a poly-pledge license, legally distinct, or so the county attorney says. Lawyers build language like Lego. So you're telling me my wife used a beta feature to enable infidelity as a subscription?" She looked almost sorry. "You can file a complaint." "I can do more than that," I said, and for the first time the word revenge felt less medieval and more administrative. As I left, I ran into Ms. Whitfield herself, HOA clipboard, like a shield. She smiled a Stepford smile. "Michael," she cooed, "your trash cans were visible from the street on Thursday. Also, congratulations aren't in order, are they? You signed my wife's secret marriage license." "I witnessed a community experiment," she said. "We're all evolving narratives." "I'm still on chapter 1 of you paying for my therapy," I said, and her smile flashed something reptilian that sent me Googling lizard people later, which I'll admit is how conspiracy grows legs in the suburbs. Outside, the flag whipped in a wind that smelled like rain and something else, like a match struck in a pantry. The American part of me wanted to sue everyone, the county, the app, gravity. The other American part of me wanted to buy a smoker, make brisket, and outlast them all in slow heat. I drove home past Little League fields, where dads in cargo shorts argued about strike zones with the theatrical seriousness of constitutional scholars. Somewhere, a radio talk show host said the word betrayal 5 times, like he was seasoning the air. I parked, sat, stared at the house where we had painted the nursery yellow on a Saturday so wholesome the dog had judged us. And I realized this wasn't just an act of cheating. It was a design flaw in a story we were sold. 1 plot per person, 1 family, 1 backyard swing set, 1 savings account, 1 forever. Apparently, forever now ships with an asterisk and a promo code. Part 4. How the Suburbs Teach Magic. Origin story with a futuristic twist. Rewind all the way to the block party on Maple Lane when I still thought secrets wore trench coats. July heat. Paper plates. A playlist of Springsteen, Beyoncé, and that one country song about trucks that is secretly about loneliness. Laura flipped burgers like a Food Network minor deity while I manned the cooler, passing out cans to a parade of men named Dan. Ms. Whitfield floated from yard to yard, counting political signs as if democracy paid her by the hour. Ethan showed up around dusk, new to the neighborhood, the kind of man who brings artisanal ice instead of dessert. He had a laugh that made mothers look twice and fathers check their car insurance. We talked about the Bengals, dry rubs, and property taxes, the 3-legged stool of suburban male intimacy. Laura laughed too brightly at one of his jokes. I remember it only because the fireflies synchronized to the beat like tiny federal agents. Back then, Laura and I were the brochure couple. Pastel church on Sunday, Trader Joe's flowers on Tuesday, Target returns on Thursday, Costco samples as a love language. I believed in the warranty. We'd been high school sweethearts, which in our town is as binding as a blood oath and twice as frequently commemorated on Facebook. The first glitch in the simulation came small, a second toothbrush in the downstairs bathroom. I asked her about it. She said it was for guests. I joked we weren't running an Airbnb. She didn't laugh. Another glitch, a second coffee mug on the back porch, ring-marked like a punctuation. She blamed the wind. I let the wind be the villain because it's hard to argue with air. On a Wednesday, why is it always a Wednesday, she started wearing a diamond pendant I didn't buy. She said it was from her sister. Her sister denied it in a text punctuated with 3 cry-laugh emojis. The American in me wanted to schedule a family meeting with an agenda and bullet points. The man in me wanted to pretend the storm was decorative. Then came the night we stood in the backyard under a sky so starry it looked pixelated, and she said, "Do you ever feel like your life is happening in captions, like the real story is happening off-screen?" I said something about being content. She nodded like I'd just endorsed beige. Later, I would realize that line about captions, about off-screen, that was her application essay to the Fellowship of the Two Rings, to New Vow, to the entire ecosystem that sells infidelity as innovation and cheating as a software patch. But here is the twist I have not told anyone, not Pastor Rick, not my therapist, not even the cedar guy at Home Depot. The week before she married Ethan, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. to find Laura standing in the hallway staring at the thermostat. The blue screen put a halo on her face. "Are we in the wrong timeline?" she asked, voice flat. In the morning, she said she was sleep-talking, but her phone, unlocked from a careless thumb, showed a note titled, "Options, Plan A, stay. Plan B, leave. Plan C, both." Under Plan C, she had written, "Parallel tracks, 2 narratives, no casualties." As if family were a commute you could split, as if betrayal were a scheduling conflict. You want sci-fi? I'll give you sci-fi. A week after the verdict, a New Vow shareholder deck leaked online, and buried in the jargon was a slide labeled Future State. We envision a social graph where vows are modular and dynamic, with consent tokens and renewable terms, in a system that reduces the cost of revenge by gamifying accountability. I laughed until I cried. Then I stopped laughing, wiped my face with a paper towel, Bounty, the quicker picker-upper, God bless America, and texted Jake, "Burgers tonight?" He sent a thumbs up and a link to a song about surviving your parents. I grilled. The dog waited for scraps like a tiny patriot. Fireflies rose like slow-motion confetti. Across the street, Ethan's porch light flicked on, and for one theatrical heartbeat our houses, our lives, faced each other like rival high school teams at midcourt. I felt the urge to compete, to win, to reclaim the plot. But the better American impulse rose up instead. Adapt. We rewrite, I said out loud to the night. Not to erase. Laura is part of my origin story, a stained glass figure all the same, but to own the frame. My family is smaller now and stranger and somehow more honest. The comedy survived, and the tenderness did too. On Sundays, I sit in the back of church and sing half a hymn. On Mondays, I take Jake for milkshakes and let him pick the toppings that make no sense. We talk about betrayal, cheating, infidelity, and the comically complicated grown-up species that attempts love in a country where everything, even vows, is a subscription you can cancel. We also talk about revenge and what it would mean to do it right, not with slashed tires or Instagram shade, but with an ordinary, stubborn joy. Some nights, I imagine a multiverse where Laura stayed, where Ethan never learned our zip code, where the HOA stuck to lawn heights and left moral philosophy alone. Then I remember the same impulse that made her split the track, the hunger for more, is the one that will carry me forward. Call it faith, call it stubbornness, call it American. Either way, this is me, starting from the end, telling the story backward so I can walk it forward, one honest step at a time.